my research presentation will be on Commedia dell'arte. I'm going to tell you about the historical context now. Commedia dell'arte was born in the Italian Renaissance, so from the 14th to the 16th century. Before the Italian Renaissance, it was medieval theatre, and everything was all about bringing people to God, and the theatre style was much about bringing people to God and spreading the word of God. But the Italian Renaissance saw birth of new perspectives on how theatre and art should be seen. So it was the first time where artists and theatre practitioners were revered for their work. So this consequently resulted in the name Commedia dell'arte translating to theatre of professionals, because people did become artists did become professionals because they were paid for their work. It has its influences date right back to Roman theatre. So Roman Italian theatre was theatre that was very improvisational, quite funny, used masks. Also, the Byzantine world saw the use of masks as well, and improvisation and physical theatre to create their pieces of theatre. The role in the culture was, at the time, was the fact that Commedia dell'arte brought everybody together. It was because their main stage was marketplaces. Everybody would go through the marketplaces, so everybody would everybody would see the theatre, and it was because it wasn't too focused on language. It was more physical theatre. It wasn't too hard to understand. It was quite universally funny, because people falling over and hitting themselves and hurting themselves is always quite funny, no matter what class you are from. The Commedia groups, this is when, and so later on, towards the 16th century, is when Commedia groups were formed, and they would travel around and perform in different little marketplaces, and that's how you would get everybody involved, and that's where the universality of Commedia dell'arte came from. So I'm going to talk now about the performance conventions and the key features of Commedia dell'arte. Masks, improvisation, lazzi, slapsticks and status, all types of things. There are many more, but these are the key things that I found that were quite interesting to explore in Commedia dell'arte. I'll go on and talk about them all in detail. Stock characters is also a big thing. There were 4 main stock characters. So the Zannis, which were the servants / clowns, the Becci, which were old men, Innamorati, the lovers, and Il Capitano, who's on another spectrum of his own. He's just one man. He doesn't have different sub-characters. Masks, as I said before, masks were quite important in Commedia dell'arte, because it showed all the features and characteristics of the characters. So one trait was that the larger the nose of the mask of a character, the stupider the character was. So as you can say, Il Pantallone's mask it's got quite a large nose, and he is a very stupid character. Slapstick comedy is also a big thing. It's Commedia dell'arte is a very physical piece, because you have the mask, so most of the story does have to come through bodily movements and actions. There's some rules of slapstick: exaggeration, repetition, dramatic irony, and rule of 3. In Commedia, a joke is usually made of how any violence falls are fake. This is done by using large movements and over-the-top sound effects, as I said. So exaggeration, when things are exaggerated, it makes them instantly more funnier, in my opinion. Repetition and the rule of 3. So these would have been used in to create humor. So if I was, let's say I was Arlecchino, who I'll be going on to talk about later in the presentation, I was to have a plate of food for my master, and I would come in the door, and I would walk through, and someone would hit me, and I'd drop everything. People would find this amusing, so I'd go back and be like, "I'll get another one," open the door again, and then it would happen again. And then this rule of three is where they start to subvert it. Everybody's expecting you to open the door, walk through it, and get hit and drop everything. But in this case, Arlecchino would think he's a bit clever, open the door, go through it, dodge the person that came, and then trip and fall, and that would make people laugh. So that's just a quick example of how repetition and rule of three is used. Slapstick is not only a term for quite physical, violent humour, but it's also a prop that Arlecchino has. The term actually comes from the prop carried by Arlecchino. The slapstick is two bits of wood that, when hit together, create a big slapping sound, and it's quite exaggerated. Slapping someone would never create that voluminous of sound, but with this exaggeration, it makes it a bit more funny. Slapstick usually involves someone getting hurt. As I said, this is quite a universal thing. Everybody gets hurt, and people naturally just find it funny. A lazzi is also a thing mostly done by the servants or the zannis. They're little asides, short improvisational movements, or a little crude joke to the audience. Usually humorous remarks, as I said, off-text improvisation, an aside, acrobatics, juggling or wrestling. Those are just, they're never scripted, they're just improvised pieces of theatre. Now I'm going to talk about movement, and movement especially in Arlecchino's sense. So with Arlecchino and most commedia dell'arte, you need to use characteristics of the person, so their status, their types of personality, to create how they would move. So Arlecchino is quite low in status, he's quite crafty, he's quite sneaky, he's always hungry, he's always looking around for food. So we need to use all of these elements and aspects to create our portrayal of Arlecchino. So to show his low status, you'd have to have an arched back. Arms are often bent with his hands on his hip, often ready to serve. So there's this is what we've got so far. His legs are usually turned out, so he would either usually stand like this. He would either stand like this, or he would create this kind of, so he would have a straight left leg out and a bent right leg at the back, sort of creating this forced bow. It's quite an uncomfortable position, but he would do this, and when he would shift his focus, he would shift from here to here, and this is how he would talk from left to right. And Arlecchino is quite a confused character. He can't keep more than one thing in his mind. So when we try and get his duality of character, or his duality of mind, by always switching from one leg to another leg, but his toes are always turned out for some reason. He runs quickly and lightly, kicking his feet forward. So when he's always running about, because he's always serving. He's a servant. He has to do chores, but he's always getting in trouble. So if he could be running from his master because he's just pulled a prank, or he could be running to get some food for his master. So with his running, he would have to kick his feet out. So he would always be running like this, but it would be much more exaggerated. So he would run a bit like this, which is highly inefficient, which just adds to the silliness of his character, because you're not going to get far. He also has the ability to stop really fast when he's caught in one of his pranks. So, but for it to be funny and us to create that humour, he would have to really exaggerate his stop. So, let's say he was running really fast, he would stop like this, like with like like widespread legs, sort of a big, loads of tension in the arms, so you could look round and see his master. There's just a lot of exaggeration there. He can, so also he likes to. Arlecchino is constantly sneaking around trying to look for food. So he takes large, exaggerated steps. So and mostly they are heel toe. So he would step like this and really step and tiptoe, and he would go. It would be a very. He would go very slowly. As I said, he can stop instantly. He's always sneaking around for food, so he's always bent over like this. Not only does that show his low status, but it also he would also stick out his nose, always trying to smell the food. So we have a quote here from his from A Servant of Two Masters. In the second act, he greets the audience by saying, "My most humble greetings, ladies and gentlemen. What a fine group. Yes, very fine indeed." So Arlecchino, obviously being quite a low status character, he's already bent down, but for him to get that wide, for him to get that wide, that exaggeration that he needs for the comedy, he would obviously have to walk in quite bent down, but then raise himself quite high just to get that "my humble greetings" and bow down with a nice swooping action, just really over the top. Ladies and gentlemen, he's always playing about. So the ladies, he might do this to signify the lady's body, but it would always be very over the top. So that's how. So I would come in and say the first part of this line: "My humble greetings, ladies and gentlemen," and that's how I would play Arlecchino if I had to. Some links. It links to Rakugo, in the sense that they were both born in a Renaissance of some kind. They were both born in a Renaissance of some kind. They came after tension. This was the start of artists being revered. Pantomime with large exaggerated movements, and the effect that this has had on me as a performer. I like to dance, but everything I do is quite mechanical in dance because I'm used to having rules to dance. But with exploring Arlecchino, he's quite a fun guy. He does what he wants. It's very improvisational, but I'm used to having a script and set movements, so it was nice to explore something different in that sense, not having to do rigid movements as such, but being able to do those nice flowing over the top movements and explore less subtle acting. And those are my sources.